Hello again, it's Noob, and I thought it was about time I figured out how the decoding method for these padlocks works. Now these are Squire CP50s, I think these are closed shackle, the CS versions, and they have a peculiarity in that you can tell when you've got the right number by how deep these wheels actually dip and bounce. So when you're in a true gate, these really fall. Just look how much that sort of presses down. You can tell what the true gate is, the actual number for this lock is, just by pressing down on the wheels and seeing how far they dip. But I don't really know why that works. I've blind decoded enough of these to know that it definitely works. It's not some magic trick. It's not me knowing the numbers in advance. I've bought these on eBay with no codes. I've been sent these with no codes, and I haven't got time to spend going from 0000 to 9999 to decode these by a brute force method. So yeah, I'm going to cut these apart and have a look on the insides and just see whether I can figure out why this technique works. And this was a suggestion from a commenter on a video which I made on these two locks recently, which you can find on my channel, of course. Okay, right, let's go cut these apart. So here we are, look at that. I've taken the whole thing apart, and the first thing to have a look at is the unlocking mechanism. So it looks like these little pins here are literally the little clickers that go in and make sure that you can hear when you're changing the number. So they click like that. This is the shackle spring, so the shackle would be here, and it would be locked into place by these, well, on both sides, these little plates. These, I assume, hardened steel plates. Take those out. Not ball bearings. They look like they're engageable bearings, but if I squash this in like that, that is how they're held in. Oh, and the spring's just shot over my head. But I have, weirdly, managed to capture it. So that's the spring. That would force the shackle up when it's unlocked. So that's in its lock position. It should have some bounce, some play in that cutout in the shackle, and that will be the same this side. You can see when I push the button in, take that little spring out for a minute. When you push this button in, you should see how this, in the correct code, like that, comes out like this. Can you see that? And these will be able to slide in. And remember, you've got a spring forcing this up, and that curve will then, as this moves in like that, force these little sliders in like that, and the shackle will pop. So that's a clever mechanism, and why the cutout on the shackle is curved when it could be square, but then you need to just pull this manually. So it does actually sort of force the, you can see that, it forces the little blocking bar in. So not a ball bearing, but like a little hardened steel blocking bar. Very cool mechanism. Okay, so we've got our spring, we have our piece of shackle, we have these two little locking bars, I guess. Then we have this little row of clickers, which are just there to make sure that the wheels are locked into a specific position, and these are probably all sprung, so hopefully, yeah, can you see how these are? Let me just put this down gently, don't lose anything. See how these little pins here, these actually look like, yeah, they're driver pins from a lock. So that's a bit of reuse there, just little sprung pins. and these will engage with the cuts on the wheels and provide that little click. So these will engage with those cuts there and provide that little click as they rotate round, making sure that you stay in the correct position. So we have two main parts here that are operating the lock. So one is the outer wheel, and that is the number that you dial. That makes sense. Then we have an inner wheel here, which obviously if you slip this and change the code and then put it back in, obviously that will change the actual code that you have. So how does this decode exploit work? Well, it actually took me a while to sort of figure it out, and I hope you agree that this makes sense. This here is the right code for this lock. If I push this in, you'll see that this opens up. Now, just look at how many numbers I have exposed, just 3. So I could push from, let's say, the side, okay, and that doesn't have much bounce. The top, a little bit of bounce, but if I push from sort of here on this side, so not much bounce, a little bit of bounce, but push sort of diagonally down at, say, a 45-degree angle, look at the movement. It's dramatically more. And I think that this is all due to just the way they made this lock. And I don't think it's something which Squire could have really thought about necessarily when they designed the lock, to give them some credit. So here is that spindle. I will align it so that I think it's something like this, like that. It'll go through. So when it's locked, it's like this. When it's unlocked, it's like that. So we only have the plain part of the spindle, the non-grooved, not non-dimpled. See these little dimples here? I'll explain what those do in a second. We just have the plain part of the spindle, just a round piece of metal to deal with. And, well, apart from a little bit of movement, like not much, look, a little bit of wiggle, there isn't much of this spindle which is moving. So we've got basically a round plug of metal with no indentations, nothing different, perfectly round all the way around. Okay. So when the inner wheel and outer wheel are on a plain piece of this spindle, you'll see that this pin here on the inner wheel is forced up into a groove on the underside of the outer wheel, essentially locking it in place. So wherever that pin is locked into is in relation to what number is correct when you need to decode it. To change that, you need to align the inner wheel with the little dimple here to allow that pin to drop down, and that will allow you to change the code to a different number, and then you'll slide it back out and that'll lock it again into a different position. So you put it in place and under that dimple, change your number to whatever you wanted, and then slide it back into position and it locks it in. That's great. Now let's have a look at how we might go about feeling for the right gate. It just so happens that when you're in a true gate, allowing this to pass through, look at where the position of that little pin is. It's actually here, which on this lock would be just underneath this number here. So at the moment we are seeing number 7, and this would actually align to, see that, being just below that number 1 there. So if I did that, that's how it would be. And that's significant because if I'm pressing, let's get that away from these little fins, so it's on a nice smooth piece of metal like that. If I'm pressing from this side, I'm pressing against that pin and I don't have much movement. If I'm pressing from this side, which is equivalent to pressing where I did before with all this movement here, I'm actually pushing down and it's got a lot more wiggle room, because what I'm doing is, can you see how this way there isn't much movement, but this way there's a bit more. So what I'm essentially doing, I think it's just the topography, if you like, that because you have the pin here when it's in the correct number, you actually have some extra movement around that pin sort of sideways. So I'm moving, it's really the wriggle room between the little reset pin there and the underside of the outer wheel. And I think really that is the key. That's what's actually happening here, is that it just so happens that the position of this little code reset pin, if you like, just happens to be sort of opposite to where I'm going to be pressing to determine whether it's the true gate or not. And because of that, you're not pushing directly onto the pin from either side. So not like this, for example. You're not doing that. You're actually pressing from the side almost at 90 degrees to the pin. And I think it's the movement side to side around that pin that we're feeling. So not this way, not this way, but this way. So it's is it oblique to the pin position? And I think that's what we're feeling. It's this slop here. It's that inner wheel moving in and out, side to side, if you like, of that pin. So I think that's what we're actually feeling here. And it just, and like I said, it's just an unfortunate way that this lock was made, with that little reset pin being essentially underneath that number, and the actual number which is correct is the one on top. So here we have 7 would be the number on the, if a lock was this way up, the left hand side. 8 would be the correct number, and between 8 and 9 is where I'll be pressing. And remember, you've got that spring underneath it holding it all up, and I'm feeling essentially the movement, like I said, side to side on that little pin, which is going to be on this lock, well, on this cassette here, between 7 and 6. So I think that's what we're feeling, is just the slop that we have from the side to side motion around that pin and the grooves. That's really it. I think that is basically it. And you can see that here, when I'm pushing at this number, I'm literally pushing against the pin here. So that's why you don't have much movement down this side. When I'm pushing here, I'm pushing almost at 90 degrees to the pin, and I'm seeing the slop. And I think that's it. I don't think there's any more to it than that. It is subtle, and the difference between, say, the right number 2 and the 3 isn't easy to find. That's why I think sometimes you have to go between the correct number and the wrong number and sort of brute force a couple of numbers. So you probably get this accurate within a couple of numbers. Just try them. That feels the most bouncy. But if I went to something like 5, you'll see that you have a lot less movement. And that's literally because you're not then moving that pin, the outer wheel like this. You're going to be pushing down on it, which has sort of less play. So pushing onto the top of the pin or slightly to the side of the pin has less play than pushing sort of laterally on it. And that's it. The amount of play is subtle, but enough that you can actually decode these. Even if you don't get all the numbers right, you can sort of go, well, it's either 3 or 4. Let's try 3, let's try 4, let's try another wheel. And then you're only dealing with a few combinations. I don't know, was it 16 or so as opposed to 10,000? So yeah, I think that's really about it. Could Squire have done much about that? I don't know. Maybe they could change the inner wheel so that these little grooves have tighter tolerances, so they don't allow much play around this pin, but that might make recoding and stuff a little harder to get right. They could maybe move this pin to a different side, so instead of being right next to where the correct number would be, so to speak, so if I put that pin here, 3 would be, it'd be sort of between 2 and 3, and 4 would be the right number. If they move that pin, say, I don't know, somewhere else, then it or change the pin position on different wheels without telling you, then you wouldn't necessarily know. I don't know. Just trying to think of ways they could have got around this, or a different recoding mechanism. But it's really this recoding pin that is causing the problems. That's what I think. Anyway, I'd love to know what you think. Do you think Squire could have spotted that? I don't think they could have done, but if you have a different opinion, then do put that in the comments below. Really interested to know what you think. Do you think I got that right? I think that is why you can feel the difference between a true gate and the true number or not. But maybe you've got a different theory, something I haven't thought of. Again, put it in the comments. I do genuinely read them all. Otherwise, if you like this video, hit that like. If you haven't subscribed, now's a great time to do so. If you think I deserve it, it really helps my channel out, and I really appreciate it. Otherwise, stay safe, happy picking, and I'll see you all next time.